In the UK, our neighbours often live too close to home.
Come and speak to me.
So it's no surprise 1 in 5 of us have been in an argument with Nextdoor. Coming up, a nightmare building project next door.
The workmanship is absolutely horrendous.
He's threatened to blow our house up.
A fight over land.
I told them both to get off my property and stay off my property.
And a community under siege.
She's brought all this on this village. End of.
And I've always said that I would spend time in prison.
A quiet suburban street in northeast London has been home to Tony and Veronica Martin for the past 23 years.
I was actually born in Woodford, so I've lived in Woodford all my life.
This particular area's got a village atmosphere. Everyone seems to know each other. Very friendly, you can step out the front door. There's always someone to say hello to. People get on with each other.
On the other side of the house next door, in her detached home, is Helen Corlin.
It is the only house like it in this road. It was a one-off, because this house was built on what should have been a road.
The Martins and the Corlins all got along well when new neighbours moved in next door.
We were very friendly with them. We even helped them to cut back some of the bushes in the garden.
We would have, if they was having a barbecue, more often than not we would get barbecue food passed across the fence, which was very, very nice.
So it was just everyday, day-to-day conversation.
But neighbourly love between the neighbours was about to go out the window.
I got an email saying that he wanted to dig within 3 metres of our property and said that the builder would be sending me some plans.
The first thing Helen knew about her neighbour's plans was when he came banging at her front door holding a magazine.
On the front of the magazine was a white double-fronted house, which he then told me he was going to proceed to make next door into.
It was clear the plans involved greatly increasing the size of his 3-bedroom end terrace.
In his own mind, he was going to make this into an enormous palace that should have been sitting in an acre of land.
Much to Helen's alarm, her neighbour's grand design meant his extension would go right up to her boundary wall.
And when the plans came through, I was told that this would be a 2-storey extension here, and I was asking how I was meant to get in and out of my front door and my back door without any danger.
Concerned by his ambitious plans, Helen went to talk to her neighbour.
I tried to explain to him that we had a right to light, and that the fact is that he would be blocking all our light out, and so he had would not be able to do it.
Her neighbour declined to tell his side of the story, but according to Helen, his response was far from neighbourly.
His reply is to start swearing and cursing and threatening. And that's when I said to him, do ourselves all a favour, we will do this the legal way, and then we won't have to talk to each other.
Helen got in touch with the council.
I explained that he would be taking my right of light.
The council's response, though, was that in this case, right to light was a private matter.
I realised that they were going to pass these plans. And it was a nightmare beginning to brew up inside of me. And from then on, he literally pushed through everything.
Within days, the building work had started. And it wasn't long before alarm bells were ringing for both neighbours.
When the building work started, it was shambolic. They weren't what I would class as builders. There was no health and safety, there's no high-vis jackets, no hard hats, chaotic.
And at the centre of it all, directing the work, was the neighbour himself.
He would strut around like a peacock. He's got the voice, and he'd make sure that everybody heard it.
He just walks around so much like a cross between Del Boy and Ali G.
The building works were becoming a serious problem.
The noise the whole time during the build was absolutely horrendous. No matter what, he was determined to work 12, 14 hours a day on this site. There was no cut-off for us. We felt like we were living on the building site constantly.
As the Neighbours extension progressed, it began to cast a shadow over Helen's home life.
You never seem to get the sunshine or the warmth into the house anymore on a nice day. You sort of like always feel like it's winter.
Her once light and airy house was now shrouded in darkness.
Every day now, I can't even come into this room without having to put lights on.
And the distance separating the two houses is just a few feet, or the length of Helen's mum's walking stick. The house still hasn't been signed off by building regulations, and in Helen's opinion, it's unsafe.
The wall's so dangerous, and we're just left living this nightmare, aren't we, Mum?
Yes, definitely.
Helen's once happy home was fast becoming her idea of hell.
It has not been finished at all. The workmanship is absolutely horrendous. It's even bowing at the top. It makes me feel totally claustrophobic, and I literally feel like the walls are coming in on me.
Little did she know, but the nightmare was far from over. Coming up, in Somerset, one woman manages to alienate a whole village.
People would drive along here, mouthing evil.
And neighbours go to war over an unowned strip of land.
And my gates were delivered back to me inside my garden.
Bournemouth is a great tourist hotspot right next to the sea. But the fight for parking spaces isn't confined to the seafront.
Without the off-road parking, you'd be lucky to park within a mile of your house.
In the town's quiet suburbs, it's first come, first served.
My sister visits me on a regular basis. She has to park in the next road or in the little town, and then she has to walk back.
Luckily for single mom Deborah Freestone, parking her car wasn't an issue. She used the end of her garden, which she got to via a strip of unregistered land.
This is the back of my house, semi-detached, and there's a side alley there. Leads out to a 60-foot length garden. This is the drive here. This is my boundary here, along here. Always parked on here since 1986. And there's a car actually parked where my KA is now. Well, it's part of my life, really.
In 2011, Deborah made a decision that would have dire consequences for neighbourly relations.
Unfortunately, my mum died, and I inherited a large sum of money. I decided to pay off the mortgage of the house, and I thought I wanted to tidy up the end of the garden.
Having used the unregistered land with no issues for 28 years, she decided to try and claim it and have a driveway laid.
There was never any objections throughout the 20-odd years I've lived here. It's a strip of land that goes nowhere, only into my garden, and no use to anyone at all.
So she sent an application to the land registry.
We thought we'd been looking after it, so we thought, yeah, it's obviously going to be ours.
While she waited to get confirmation about the patch of land, a new family moved into the neighbourhood.
When I heard of my neighbours moving in, I was delighted, and I thought I'd go and say hello and introduce myself. The family who moved in seemed very nice.
3 months after the arrival of her new neighbours, Deborah wanted to get started on her new driveway. But she received some unexpected news.
And then I received a letter from the land registry. They refused my application. They said that through lack of evidence, I couldn't claim it. I was absolutely, well, devastated.
A main reason for the rejection was because the land wasn't enclosed on Deborah's property. So she was advised to go ahead with the build in order to officially claim it as hers.
The solicitors reassured me that it was just a legality to be able to obtain the land.
Sure she was taking the right path, Deborah set her builders to work.
So we thought if we cover it up, it'll be a lot nicer and a lot more neater.
I really like these gates for the security of my home. They cost me £500 and I got a special sign to say that the drive was in constant use. All in all, it cost me about £4,000.
Everything went well, and soon Deborah was enjoying her newly paved, gated driveway. But then, 3 months later, there was a knock at the door. It was her neighbour, along with one of Deborah's other neighbours.
They were stood there and said, "We have a letter for you. We suggest you read it." The content of the letter was basically saying that I erected these gates deliberately trying to impede their access to the land. It was demanding me to revert the drive back to its normal state of grass. And I thought, how ridiculous.
Deborah made it clear to her neighbours what she thought of their demands.
I put the letter back into the envelope and I threw it and told them both to get off my property and stay off my property.
She was just trying to stand her ground and stop them bullying her, in a sense.
Deborah was suddenly faced with the dilemma: remove the £4,000 driveway that was next to the neighbour's house, or risk the wrath of her neighbours.
I wasn't going to tear up my lovely driveway. I had very good advice from my solicitors and they reassured me that I was doing everything above board and I didn't care whether the two neighbours had an issue.
What Deborah didn't realise was that the turf war was just beginning. Withycombe in Somerset, like most rural villages, is a place where everybody knows each other's business. Bill Galloway's family has lived here for generations.
It was a very busy village with people coming in from house to house. People were so closer together because it was nearly all family and friends.
But over the years, the local population has dwindled.
Nothing happens. You know, this is a busy day. We've seen a car. People generally quiet, keep themselves to themselves.
Now eager newcomers are moving in from the town for a taste of the country life. Like Meg Sunningdale, who moved here 8 years ago with her husband after falling in love with the area.
When we moved in here, we were really excited. We're in this lovely valley here, as you can see. Trees, woodland, this wonderful stream. Yes, just the perfect environment, it seems, for me. I didn't really know what to expect when I moved here because I have never lived in a small village before, but I did come in with a lot of enthusiasm.
But this close-knit community is not immediately trusting of outsiders.
You've got to be very careful what you say in a small place like this because you upset too many people.
As soon as she moved in, Meg, a dedicated animal lover, was in seventh heaven.
And this is my fruit cage, which has all been shared by ducks, and the ducks have been very safe from foxes here. I do feel that animals need a spokesperson. They don't have rights. This area I feed the pheasants because I try to keep them off the hill where they're shot.
Meg seemed oblivious that farming communities have a very different attitude to animals.
I've been described as a warrior for animals, and I'm proud of that, you know.
Once she'd settled in, Meg decided she needed a way of introducing herself to the locals.
I organised an event sort of fairly soon after we moved in, which wasn't incredibly well attended by the villagers, but I didn't take that personally. My dog show that I organised, this was advertising the open night in the RSPCA shop.
She always had signs on her gate posts of there was always something going on.
The villagers were beginning to get wind of Meg's obsession for protecting all creatures great and small, and she certainly made an impression.
When I met Meg for the first time, I thought she was very interfering old lady.
I was standing by my house and there was a gentleman from up the road who was walking his dogs in the field. It was pheasant breeding time and there were youngsters running around, and when I saw him doing it I thought, no, you know, he can't let his dog do that. A person walking around is bad enough, but a dog running around, ground nesting birds and chicks around. He was chasing the pheasants were flying up. So I couldn't help myself. I didn't think, I just shouted. He's held that pretty well against me ever since.
You must not do this, you must do this. Look after animals. Gave you earache all the time.
She was regarded, rightly or wrongly, as a bit of a nutter with regards to her animal sort of welfare thing, but I think she did used to take it to extremes. To come and live in a rural, small, farming village and then expect people to not do things in the country that they do, why would you want to go and live in the middle of it?
Although Meg hadn't become close to her neighbours, she did make some new friends.
In my life, I hadn't seen a badger, but I had badgers on my doorstep. I felt so privileged because it's not many people in this country ever see a live badger.
The villagers didn't want to encourage badgers, some believing they could spread tuberculosis in cattle. But Meg ignored them, determined to feed her badgers.
Sandwiches, peanuts, dried fruit.
Her decision didn't go down well with the locals.
I was told by one of my neighbours that she had to put a fence up because the badgers were spoiling her garden, and she said it very accusingly.
But Meg didn't stop there. Her next move would create an uproar that would divide the village.
I don't believe she realised really what the repercussions could be.
In northeast London, love thy neighbour had turned to hate when one man's desire to create a 5-bedroom palace brought noise, destruction and darkness.
It got to the stage that I was frightened to even come out into the garden because there was just builders everywhere.
But for Helen Corlin, living next door to a nightmare neighbour was about to get a whole lot worse.
It was early spring. They took out the back supporting wall. They left the upstairs walls and they took out the back of the ground floor, the back wall and the side wall.
Helen feared the house next door was unstable and could fall down.
We could have lost our house and we could have lost our lives because our windows are on that side of the house.
At the front of the house, things weren't much better either, as Tony found out.
As you can see, this is another piece of the empire. The porch, which was perfectly okay before, was just knocked down. No prior warning, no consideration to us. When they knocked it down, all the rubble and the dirt and everything come onto our land. They didn't do anything to protect our wall, so it got soaked. The other one used to come to here, and it was a perfectly good porch. Again, it's back to that no consideration for us, no consideration for our property at all.
As the building work next door progressed, Tony began to notice worrying damage to his house.
And the first thing I immediately saw was a huge crack, which literally went right across the whole hall. It just looked like it went on forever. So I come into my daughter's room, and the crack went right along the top and all the way down the window. I was absolutely furious. I went running down the stairs to his builders who were outside talking to my wife and called them all in. And I called them in here, and literally, as soon as Veronica saw this, she screamed because she thought the whole house was going to fall down. They just went, oh, oh. And I said, well, you've got to be, what have you done? Just said, well, we'll fix it. But he just couldn't get the magnitude of the whole thing. And it was just no remorse. It was like, oh, what, so what?
And it seemed the neighbour also had some help with building techniques from an unusual source.
The work was being carried out by his mates using self-help YouTube videos.
Well, that's pathetic. It's as simple as that. That's the first I've heard that he used self-help videos to build a house.
No, I knew he went onto the internet. He told me he'd searched on the internet.
I find it absolutely astonishing that well, I'm gobsmacked at that.
Both sets of neighbours were convinced the building work was unsatisfactory and risked their own safety.
They got a representative down who then saw that the site was unsafe, and they called in the health and safety executive, who then come and shut the site.
Still to come, the dispute between neighbours was about to escalate.
He's threatened to blow our house up. He's threatened to put bricks through our window.
And in Bournemouth, Deborah Freestone is fighting back.
Police said if I continued behaving in this way, I would be arrested.
In Somerset, new arrival Meg Sunningdale's love of animals was beginning to alienate her from the neighbours.
She was regarded, rightly or wrongly, as a bit of a nutter.
She had begun feeding badgers in her garden, and this obsession with wildlife was dividing opinion in the village.
I think badgers were a greater priority to me than being part of the community.
But government policy was that drastic action needed to be taken to lower the size of the badger population in the UK. It was believed they were helping to spread tuberculosis in cattle. And despite fierce debate on the subject, in 2012 farmers in the Somerset area became part of a pilot scheme and were issued with licences to carry out a badger cull within a mile of Meg's back door.
When we heard that there was going to be a badger cull, we just didn't believe it. We couldn't believe that human beings would be prepared to do that.
I appreciate that there is a problem with badgers. I don't necessarily agree that, I say, killing a load of them is going to make a difference to their problem. But that's what they powers to be decided. And Meg wanted to make an issue about it, which she definitely made an issue.
By now, Meg was a woman on a mission, with all thoughts of neighbourly relations out the window. She communicated with badger protection groups and was shocked to discover that one of her neighbours was allegedly taking part in the badger cull.
I just couldn't believe that he would be part of a badger cull. And my natural instinct was to name and shame this person.
With that information, Meg's next act would have serious consequences.
People who are shooting badgers didn't want anybody to know, obviously, and I don't think that's right. I think they should be prepared to tell people.
She went ahead and wrote the name of the alleged shooter on her poster and stuck it on her gate for all the locals to see. Meg's outed neighbour, who can't be named, declined to tell his side of the story.
I don't know what I was thinking at the time. I just did it.
Militant Meg was unstoppable. She decided to put up more posters revealing the local man's identity in the centre of the village, creating a huge rift with the majority of neighbours.
Couldn't believe that someone would be that, I don't know, stupid to actually do that. It was unbelievable.
Meg's crusade had caught the attention of the press. A national newspaper sent a photographer to the village to snap Meg holding the poster. The image sparked fury against her neighbour, whose personal details were now exposed.
I know that he was getting abusive phone calls, emails. They had all his contact details. It was like non-stop. He was frightened for his family, all because Meg had put posters up.
I didn't feel bad about the phone calls they were receiving. I thought, well, that's a bit more ammunition. I can't remember being remorseful.
The abusive phone calls from protesters continued to flood into the alleged shooter, and soon it became too much.
I mean, he was that frightened for his family, his wife and children, that he moved them out of the village.
Tensions were now increasing in the village, and neighbours made their feelings towards Meg clear. She was now ostracised from the community.
People would drive along here, mouthing evil.
But Meg's next dramatic move would have the village under siege. Back in London, the dispute over the extension had eased, as the site shut down for safety reasons.
We could have lost our house and we could have lost our lives because our windows are on that side of the house.
Peace returned to the street for the next 3 months. The neighbour was instructed that if he wanted to finish off his extension, he would need a structural engineer. His neighbours were still living next to the nightmare, but at least they could take comfort a professional was now in charge. But more trouble soon came knocking at their door.
I was not given any promises that we will look after your property or we will put protection up. There wasn't anything. And I was told not to let him put scaffolding up on my property.
When Helen refused, relations hit a new low.
He has threatened me to a degree that he has told me I should watch my back.
And it wasn't aimed just at Helen.
He's threatened to blow our house up. He's threatened to put bricks through our window.
However, the neighbour claims they were nothing more than empty threats.
I've been very ill this year and I've literally had to pull myself up and start fighting again.
Despite his intimidation, Helen refused to give up.
We did a right to light survey, which was paid for by my insurance company and their legal team. And we took it to the court, and from our local court, it was sent straight up to the High Court.
After 2.5 years of misery, she finally had some resolution.
And he gave me an out-of-court settlement of £30,000 in damages and £7,500 in legal costs.
Tony and Veronica, though, have received no compensation. The neighbour has promised he will repair their party wall, but the Martins continue to despair at unfinished building work next door.
3 years on, we're still living through it all the time, and we don't really know if there's going to be more damage to our house in future years.
There is no completion date for now.
It's like your worst nightmare, but the only good thing about a nightmare is you're going to wake up sometime. We wake up and it's still there.
But it appears the cracks in these neighbourly relations may never be mended.
I'd like to be on speaking terms with them, but you can't.
I do not even acknowledge his existence. He's ruined everything we've ever worked for.
In Bournemouth, Deborah Freestone had built a new driveway on an unregistered 20-foot patch of land.
It's a strip of land that goes nowhere, only into my garden, and no use to anyone at all.
But her neighbours objected.
I threw it and told them both to get off my property and stay off my property.
By now, her neighbour had indicated that he wanted to put in a claim for the land. Months passed without incident, and the land remained unregistered. But the peace was about to be shattered.
I just finished work and I drove home, and as I approached the drive, I realised my lovely gates had gone. And I inspected the post, and it had actually been sawn off. And my gates were delivered back to me inside my garden and all piled up, resting up against my fence.
Her neighbour had removed Deborah's new gates.
Just then, I looked down the road and Zach was coming down. Well, you couldn't believe it, could you, Zach?
No.
You've done it.
The emotions were just like, it was anger, then frustration, then upset.
I phoned up the police and I said, in a mood, I feel like throwing a brick through his car window. Also, I said he was a Polish, because I thought he was Polish around all that time. And apparently it was discrimination, racist. They said that my phone call was very aggressive. I said I was annoyed, but no, I'm not an aggressive person. They had that on record, and they kept that.
No, I went to his window and went, oh, can you come out? I want to talk to you, I don't know what's going on. 2 squad cars ran from there to there and went up to me and went, can you please move?
So he was too scared, a coward, to confront us, and told the police that he was being intimidated by a 15-year-old, and he was acting in an aggressive manner. And we thought, no, we're going to put them back up for our privacy.
Deborah and Zach put the gate back up, this time on their own boundary. A turf war was now declared between the once friendly neighbours. 3 months later, Deborah's friend and neighbour, Pamela LeBlonde, was to become witness to another event.
I was sitting in the chair and I heard shoveling going on, which seemed unusual, and I had a look out of the window. There seemed to be 2 men digging up the driveway. One of them turned, and then I thought, get evidence. So I ran and asked one of my lodgers if I could borrow his camera. Managed to get the camera into the little gap by lifting this without being seen, and took footage of the whole thing.
Her neighbour and another man were digging up the driveway Deborah had built on the land.
I arrived later on and I just came around the corner and I just like, wow, I saw all the rubble and all the mess and I was just heartbroken. The paving slabs had been dug up and stacked like playing cards up against the gates. It's all been dug up and ruined, and so the money and my mum's memory has been destroyed for me.
He was sending a clear message to his neighbour.
He parked his BMW on the driveway. He didn't need to do that because he had a forecourt and he had his own garage. He just did it to annoy me.
But in return, Deborah took the law into her own hands, a move which was to have serious repercussions, making her look like the nightmare neighbour.
One day I put a big notice up in my car with a big arrow pointing to his house. I reversed my car so everyone could see. I got in big trouble for that, and the police came round and said, that if I didn't remove it and if I continued behaving in this way, I would be arrested.
She did over-exaggerate and get angry. It's in her to try and make sure no one can push her around and push her into a corner.
The neighbour alleged that Deborah was continually harassing him, but she felt she was the victim.
I was in contact as he sent me letters on a regular basis and often containing threats of removing my car, building walls to block my garden, also saying that I was harassing him and his family and causing them a great deal of upset. As the time went on, he called the police on me and my son for bizarre things such as looking in his window, barking at his wife.
Neighbourly relations were now in pieces. Coming up, things for Deborah take a very serious turn.
To enter a courtroom with a judge just terrified me.
While in Somerset, Meg gets a very clear message from her neighbours.
And he stopped, reversed, and shone a huge bright light onto us. And I said to him, "You're an absolute..."
Back in Bournemouth, Deborah Freestone was embattled with her neighbour over a patch of land.
He called the police on me and my son for bizarre things such as looking in his window, barking at his wife.
After a year of relentless dispute, one day the situation came to a head.
I received a court summons harassment through all complaints against me. It was the police actually that brought a case of harassment out on me, and I had to go to court. I was absolutely gutted. The day I went to court was very nerve-wracking. To enter a courtroom with a judge just terrified me. There was no evidence brought from the police and the case was dropped.
Deborah was free to go, but that wasn't the end of it.
The judge gave me a restraining order for a year not to contact him in any way. It says not to enter his property, not to look into his window whilst walking past his property, contacting him directly or via a friend, only through solicitors. Basically not to talk to him.
Although she felt she'd done nothing wrong, Deborah accepted the court order.
By accepting the restraining order, I felt like I was saying that I was guilty of doing things. It just felt wrong, really, that I was doing it, but it did clear the case and wipe the slate clean, as it were.
When asked, her neighbour declined to comment on the events that led to the restraining order. Deborah may have accepted the court's decision, but she isn't giving up her fight to claim the land.
The events over the past 2 years have been unnecessary. Hopefully, in the future, the drive can be reconstructed and I can eventually claim the land and put it on add it to my deeds.
This could be one turf war that's not laid to rest just yet. In a quiet corner of Somerset, Meg Sunningdale had created a huge rift with her neighbours over a badger cull.
I gradually noticed that people weren't speaking to me.
I don't think this is about the animals. This is about the nonsense that came in behind it.
Media reports on Meg's opposition to the cull drew animal rights protesters to camp out close to the village. They gathered in the local woods at night.
This is the gate that a lot of protesters would have had to open and walk through to this Withicombe Wood. On several occasions there was shooting beside me and I had to use these to make my presence known because I was really fearful.
Thanks to Meg's extreme actions, the village was now under siege.
Right, this is where I live. This is my place. That is the cover where all the protesters were kicking off. Then they used to congregate under that big oak tree. That's where they used to have a little bit of a shindig. They had no worry about shining spotlights. That's what they were, spotlights in all of these windows along here. Everybody knew about it. They didn't normally start until probably 2:30 in the morning. Just give you time to get to sleep. Started off with the lights, whistle, air horns. I don't need them out there keeping me awake every night. What they thought they were achieving, I do not know. But what they did achieve was certainly along here.
It's quite loud.
It needs to be. My response to people who are complaining or have complained about noise in their village, my response to that would be, what about the noise the shooters have been making?
Locals were unimpressed by the protesters' tactics, which were fully supported by Meg, whose loyalties to her neighbours were by now long forgotten.
I think badgers were a greater priority to me than being part of the community.
At odds with the rest of the locals, Meg's naming and shaming tactics ended up with the police being called.
Fine, yes, come along to the police station. What an experience.
Meg was cautioned for exposing the personal details of the shooter.
I'm quite proud to have a caution for badgers. Not a problem.
With the village now overrun with protesters, Withycombe was more like a war zone, with unrepentant Meg right in the thick of things.
We were spotted by a shooter returning home, and he stopped, reversed, and shone a huge bright light onto us, really dazzling, like a floodlight. And I said to him, "You're an absolute..." But he sort of didn't say a word, and he drove on. The next day, I had 3 bags of dog excrement in my garden. I thought, what can I do with this?
What Meg did do was return it to one of the neighbours who she believed may have been involved. And she left a very clear note.
The note said, if you feel the need to shoot living targets, maybe you ought to join the army. And, oh, no, probably you would be too cowardly to be on the other end of a gun.
It's quite inflammatory.
Yes. Nasty.
The neighbour's response was to call the police.
They said, you had better not do it again. I promised not to do it again, and signed a little thing, and that was that.
After 6 weeks, the cult ended, having failed to reach its target. The protesters finally left Withycombe. But the ill feeling between neighbours and a now isolated Meg festered.
I don't know what reputation I had to start with, so I don't know about ruin, but I certainly have a very bad reputation now.
Do I feel any sympathy for her? No, I don't. I believe she's brought everything on herself.
For now, Britain's badgers can breathe safely. But there is one casualty in all this.
I think maybe a small village isn't the place for me.
With Meg selling up and moving on, it seems she won't be missed in the village of Withycombe.
I don't think it'll make any difference whatsoever. Except I won't be able to say we've got a nutter living in the village anymore.
Next time, blood is spilt in Barnsley.
He was coming up the drive here with blood all over his arm.
A neighbourly dispute in Scotland tears a family apart.
It became too much for the marriage in the end. I think this would have broken any family.
And house prices tumble when squatters move in next door.
The estate agent said between 25% and 35% has come off the value of my property.